Hi, Adam Taxin here in Biloxi, Mississippi with Rabbi Akiva Hall, who is the only Orthodox rabbi in the state. In fact, he's only been in the state of Mississippi as a rabbi for a couple months. He just opened up Chabad with his wife, Chabad of southern Mississippi, even though he is a Mississippi native, or sort of a native here. He grew up, part of his growing up period here. And it's really a big deal. Now Chabad is found in 49 of the 50 states. Mississippi is the 49th. South Dakota is the only one without a full-time Chabad presence. So that's enough of me talking. Rabbi Hall, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your story.
Sure.
And I'd say welcome to town, but I'm not from here.
Well, thank you very much. We are very happy to be here. My wife and I got married 2 years ago, and we lived through our time in New York, a time in California, and I grew up in Mississippi, like you said. So after, a few months ago, we were offered the opportunity to open up a Chabad center on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, a place where there has been somewhat of a Jewish presence, but there hasn't been any Chabad presence, any Orthodox presence here. So it's a very exciting opportunity we have.
Actually, let me interject. We're going to get to your story, but you said some Jewish presence. Now, there's a long history of Jews in the South.
Yes.
And, you were telling me about this yesterday. Lots of Jewish peddlers would come and set up shop, often opening up department stores in cities and towns much smaller than Biloxi is now and Biloxi was then. But for some reason, Biloxi really never had a significant Jewish presence, though a lot of people, I guess, associated with Judaism because of the play and movie Biloxi Blues, which has a Jewish main character, Ben Simon, which is a very Jewish play.
That's true.
But there really never was much of a Jewish presence in Biloxi?
In northern Mississippi, in many of the cities, Natchez, Hattiesburg, many of the northern cities of Mississippi in the 1850s and 60s and 70s, you found there were big active Jewish communities, religious Orthodox communities, with kosher butchers and mikvahs, etc. Mm-hmm. However, many of these communities, eventually people moved away, there was assimilation, mm-hmm. They all eventually were abandoned. However, the Gulf Coast of Mississippi never had a permanent Jewish community. In fact, there's a conservative synagogue here, which was opened in 1950, around that area. But prior to that time, there was never a synagogue, never a Jewish community on the Gulf Coast, in Biloxi or Gulfport.
Really? The only, I can't help but think of this. We're very close to Beauvoir, is Jefferson Davis's home, and he had a Jewish vice president, right?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, but not a Mississippian, I guess.
I'm not sure.
I'm blanking on his name just because I'm so tired.
I don't remember.
But I know it was a Jewish vice president. Sorry to digress. Okay, let's get back to your story about how you arrived here. What age did you start living in Mississippi? Where there, which is a hard place to grow up as an Orthodox Jew,
Sure.
even though New Orleans isn't that far away.
Sure. My family moved here when I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was enrolled in the local Sunday school, the Hebrew school of the conservative synagogue. Then my family became very close with many of the rabbis in New Orleans. So my family was often in New Orleans for Shabbos and holidays and different events. Mm-hmm. I learned, I was tutored by one of the rabbis there. And after high school, I attended yeshivas in Los Angeles and California and New York.
For people watching, many are not familiar with Chabad, and many do not even know what it is like to be a shliach or emissary. And you're doing it in a very traditional way. You're going to an area where there's no real Jewish infrastructure. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's like for you and your wife and your
Sure.
daughter, I guess, too?
Luckily, like you said, we are only about an hour and a half away from New Orleans, which has a very active Jewish community with kosher restaurants and synagogues and mikvahs and everything you could need. So we're not in the middle of nowhere in a classic sense.
It's not like Rabbi Brooks setting up shop in Bozeman, Montana.
If we want a kosher hamburger, we just drive an hour and a half. But that being said, there is no active Orthodox synagogue in the whole state. There is no kosher meat or cheese immediately available in our vicinity. Mm-hmm. And being the only Orthodox people in a very large radius is obviously very challenging, and it has good parts, and it also has some very challenging parts. But we are trying to positively impact the community by drawing Jewish people closer to Judaism. We're not out to convert anybody to being Orthodox, but that Jewish people who live in a very non-Jewish area are able to have some exposure to their heritage and are able to come together at some time and feel what it means to be Jewish and part of a Jewish community, the best we're able to.
A little bit more about Mississippi for people who may be watching it. You said there still is one Orthodox shul that basically is barely functional in Greenwood, which is
Greenville.
They're near each other, right? Which is nowhere near here, right?
No, Greenville is about 6 hours north, I believe. And it's a holdover from another era. The synagogue there, I believe it's called Agudas Achim or something along those lines. It functioned for many years, over 100 years ago. And in the last decade or so, they've had services maybe once a year. There's a few old men who kept things going, but they've all since, I think, passed away. And no one actually observant lives in the community, but there was a desire to keep the synagogue going as an institution. But as far as any observant Jewish life in Mississippi, there's nothing left.
And, you'll probably be modest about it. I want to go back to something else we were talking about. But you're here for life. This is your home now. Often other denominations will send someone who's a rabbi, a student rabbi to a less Jewishly populated area, and it's just basically training. That is not the case for you. You're committed to being here unless Mashiach comes and we all go to Israel.
That is correct. This is our life mission. We believe that as every Jewish person is an ambassador of God, and wherever their location is, they bring Torah and bring godliness to that place. And specifically us, as we belong to the Chabad Hasidic movement, we are also ambassadors not only of God, but also of the Lubavitch Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, who didn't found the Chabad movement, but spearheaded this idea of sending young couples to places to bolster Judaism. This is our mission. This is not our career choice. We're not in it for the money because there's not much to be had. But this is our mission. This is what we're here for, like you said, until we believe the Messiah will come.
Let me ask you one other thing. What are your immediate goals? Are you trying to set up a synagogue, or are you trying to set up a Hebrew school, or are you just trying to enable people to do mitzvah? This is some of the loaded question. We've talked about it. And what, in your ideal world would happen within 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of you being here? Maybe, there would be a movement, someone would open up a kollel and lots of Jews would move to Biloxi. Feel free to sell the area.
It's a great question. Our immediate goal is not to open a synagogue, although we do have an area in our home which functions as a synagogue if the need arises.
It was once a garage.
It was
right?
once a converted garage. It's a very beautiful space. We're very fortunate to have a Torah scroll and an ark and a beautiful space. But we're not here to open a synagogue. There is a conservative synagogue here that has services periodically, once a week. So we are not conflicting with them. Our main mission at this time is to teach Torah, to give classes, shiurim, spread holiday awareness, give Jewish people an opportunity to live Jewishly. Also, practically speaking, there is no other rabbi on the Gulf Coast, Mississippi. So across the spectrum of denominations, any need for a rabbi, my wife and I are here to meet that need as well. In the future, I would love to believe one day, based around the existing synagogue, perhaps that there could be a viable, observant Jewish community. But for now, our goal is no less important. For now, our goal is reaching every person one at a time and giving Jewish people an opportunity to connect with their heritage. And what the future brings, we'll see.
And you know what? It's early December right now, but Hanukkah's less than 2 weeks away. Why don't you tell people, as you did in another video, what you have planned for Hanukkah, very public candlelighting, which is something that's big with Chabad.
That's right. So, God willing, December 18th, the fourth night of Hanukkah, we are making
This is 2014, in case this video stays around for years.
Yes. We are making a giant menorah lighting at Edgewater Mall, which is the largest mall in the Gulf Coast, Mississippi. We're going to have Jewish music, latkes, donuts, of course, a few speeches. God willing, be a very beautiful event.
And what's the real purpose of that? To get a few Jews out there to connect?
The purpose is twofold. First of all, even for Jews and even for non-Jews, publicizing the miracle of Hanukkah, that God took care of His people, and this is not a miracle. And it teaches Jewish people today that assimilation is not an answer. Mm-hmm. The Maccabees fought against those Jews who were trying to assimilate themselves into Greek culture, and God bolstered their effort. Hanukkah is a lesson we can all learn from, and it's a mitzvah, as it's brought in the Talmud and other sources, to publicize the fact that God made this miracle for the Jewish people. But also, as you said, of course, if a Jewish person, especially in December, a very non-Jewish time of year, in Biloxi, Mississippi, a very non-Jewish place, walks through the mall, happens to see a menorah lit, it could spark something inside of him or inside of her which leads to something more and leads to more of a desire. So just seeing a menorah, being a part of something like this, in a place like this, could potentially be the springboard for a person moving closer and closer to their heritage. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Was there something else I was going to ask? Now I can't remember. I didn't write it down. All right, Rabbi Hall. Let me just think one more minute. If there's anything else I meant to ask you. I know there was. It's just a question of whether I can remember it right now. I'm not going to edit it in. I don't remember. We can always make another video. Thanks for your time right now.
My pleasure. Thank you very
Good
much.
luck with the whole building. Oh, I know what the question was. This is interesting to me. For years, I mean, I follow Chabad enough. There was no Chabad emissary in between Tallahassee, Florida, and New Orleans. I don't think Birmingham, Alabama counts because it's pretty far north in the state.
Many hours north.
Yeah, it's not really in the area.
6 hours away from
But in the last year, I don't know if it's related to the amount of time that's elapsed since Katrina, but you suddenly now have 3 in between where there were none a year ago at this time. I'm talking also about Rabbi Goldwasser in Mobile, Alabama, and I can't remember.
Tenenbaum.
Yeah, it is in Destin, Florida.
That's correct.
Is that a coincidence, or did something happen?
I mean, as Jews, we don't believe in coincidence. Obviously, God had orchestrated this for a reason. However, there was no orchestrated decision to open up in succession these locations. So, in fact, there was even some discussion maybe against it, because maybe 3 Chabad centers in such close proximity might be disadvantageous to each other, being so close.
Right. It's not that close. No, but if you were in southern Florida, you'd have about 500.
Mobile and the Gulfport are relatively close, but they're each very distinctive locations. And I think God orchestrated it in such a way that these places that until
it's working.
until this time didn't have a Orthodox or a Chabad presence, it just so happens that at the same time the need arose and it took shape.
Pensacola is still available if some aspiring shliach out there.
And South Dakota.
Well, that's not on the Gulf Coast. Yeah, South Dakota will be interesting when they have all 50. And North Dakota was, I think, just in the last year or two.
I'm not sure South Dakota will, by the way, because there's only a few hundred Jewish people there, and the rabbi in North Dakota does regular programming in South Dakota.
Is the one in North Dakota or the one in Nebraska? Because there's not much population.
I believe North Dakota, but I could be mistaken.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's any immediate plans for South Dakota.
I think it's the one in Omaha. But anyhow, we're well off the main topic here. Welcome to Mississippi. It's great.
Thank you very much.
It's been great being here the last couple days, and good luck with the mission.
Thank you very much.